the real, raw, honest conversations about parenting teenagers in today's world. No filters, no sugarcoating, just truth, compassion, and practical insight from experts, educators, and parents who are right in the trenches alongside you. This podcast is where parents come to hear the conversations they didn't even know they needed. My mission is simple: to help you feel supported, informed, and empowered so you can build a connection with your teen that you truly want. If you want to go deeper into this work with me, stay until the end, and I will share how you can connect with me. From my heart to yours, thank you for being here, for doing the hard work of parenting, and for choosing to grow right alongside your teen. Welcome to another episode of Parenting Teens Advice Redefined for Today's World, where we have the real and raw and honest conversations about raising teenagers, and maybe even the conversations you never knew you needed. Today's conversation may take you further back than you ever gone when trying to understand your teen, all the way back to birth. We're exploring sibling birth order, early attachment, and the often unspoken disconnection that can happen between a mother and her child when a new sibling is born, and how those early experiences can shape behavior, identity, and connection years later. I'm joined by Sharon King, an international trainer of energy psychology techniques, best-selling author, and the leading voice in the space of pre- and perinatal birth trauma for both mother and baby. Through her work with Magical New Beginnings and Heal Your Birth book, Sharon helps individuals transform their experiences of conception, pregnancy, and birth, shifting emotional patterns and creating deeper connection and empowerment in their lives. Joining us from Thailand, where she lands retreats, trains practitioners from around the world, Sharon brings a perspective that is both deeply intuitive, profoundly transformative. This is a conversation that may change how you see your child and how you understand the roots of connection. When you understand the beginning of the story, you can finally shift how it's playing out now. Welcome, Sharon King.
Thank you so much. I'm so looking forward to our conversation together.
So am I. And the more I dove into what we had talked about pre-call here, I was like, oh my gosh, this is opening up a whole can of worms that is so impactful. So Sharon, let's start with you first. What are you doing? What's your mission? What's your story? What's the point?
Oh, that's a big question to start with.
Yes.
Okay, well, my life mission seems to be to help people transform their experience of birth, in utero, early childhood, healing separation. And my new topic I really seem to be picking up on at the moment is how most trauma has an element of grief to it because there is a loss to it. So that's my new passion at the moment.
When we talk about, I mean, we've heard the term, the third child, you know, the older child, younger child, for everybody seems to have a place. But when a new sibling is born, what is happening emotionally and energetically for the older child, you know, that parents don't see?
So you go from being the baby, being the youngest, even if you're, you know, the oldest and now you have a new sibling coming along, or even if you're, you know, one of three, you go from being the youngest, the baby of the family, to suddenly having to share mum and dad.
Yeah.
And what's really fascinating is that, you know, from the early years, from 0 to let's say 2 or maybe 3, you don't really remember what it was like when you were a baby and how much attention you got and how much attention you needed. Mm-hmm. But when you get to 4, like me, when I remember my brother turned up when I was 4, I suddenly realized that I was no longer the baby. I was no longer the prized possession, because now somebody had come in and taken my place. And not only had they taken my place, but they needed like nearly all of mum's attention. And in that moment, because we forget, we don't understand how much attention we got when we were that age. But at the age of 4 or 5, we start to compare. We're able to compare.
Yeah.
So it's that sudden loss. And, you know, going back to that grief, or what I can also describe as maybe a little bit of a break in the bond. It's that betrayal. It's like suddenly I'm no longer the baby, I'm no longer important. And now, you know, mum's been away, she's been away for a number of days. I've had to stay with granny or auntie or the babysitter or dad or whoever. And now mum's come home with this thing that is taking all her attention.
Yeah. Well, and explain the actual, like the attachment and the connection at infancy. Like, what is that between mother and child? And I'm not disconnecting dads, but this is what we're talking about right now. But what is that connection like for them? Like, what does it mean? And what does it do in those early stages before the next sibling comes?
Before the next sibling. So we could even start in utero, you know. Yeah. So I've worked with thousands of clients around their in utero and birth experience. And some people in utero feel that mother's love. They feel that connection. You know, mum takes time to connect with them. But some mothers don't. Maybe it's because, you know, they're very focused on their work, or they don't realize the importance of connecting with the baby. And then we go through the birthing process. And for me, when I was being born, my mum was given pethidine halfway through my birth experience. So that was another break in the bond, if you like, that disconnection, because mum was there, her body, you know, she was present, she was working with me to help me to get out. And then all of a sudden, she's gone to sleep. So that was like, whoa, where's mum? And I have to do this all on my own. Wow. And if you want to talk about birth order, because the first child always ends up shouldering a lot of the responsibility. Wow. So I became super independent, super responsible, because, well, I have to do this all on my own now. I have to get myself out of this situation. Yeah. And then my mum held me for a couple of minutes, and then she needed to go back to sleep and sleep off the pethidine. So my baby self was put in the nursery for 5 or 6 hours. Yeah. So I lost that first initial important bonding connection with my mum, because as babies, when we're born, we are hardwired to connect, to bond, to the baby's eyesight is like really only designed to be focused on the mother's face. Yeah. It's like we need to imprint on that mother's face. This is mum, this is dad, this is the doctor, but we're more concerned about who mum is, who's going to be our caretaker, and we need to keep on with that constant connection with mum, and we need to hear her voice, and we need to be held. We need that physical body connection. We need to hear mum's heartbeat. This is why putting the baby on the chest is so important. You know, we need to be breastfed. And so much of our development happens in that first 45 minutes from the moment we're born, going through that bonding process. For those physical things, that development that happens to us, you know, our fourth part of our brain, our prefrontal cortex, starts to develop, is stimulated. You know, our digestive system, our respiratory system, our nervous system. If we've just come through maybe a traumatic time being born, we need that nurturing. We need to be held. We need to be like, there. We need to be soothed. It's okay. You're here now. You know, and if we don't get that soothing, if we don't get that, I know you've had a tough time getting here, but you're here now and we love you and we're going to keep you safe. If we don't get that, then we tend to we don't trust the world around us.
Wow. This just makes me then wonder, there's that, you're pregnant with your first, and you spend, I remember like talking and having stories and really connecting with my son at the time. What is the difference when now you have another child coming? You're sharing that attention while you're pregnant with your second. You're now splitting that attention. Now you obviously have to look after this, your first child.
Yes.
Is there a disconnection in utero for the second child coming when the mom is dividing her attention?
That's a very good question. I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. It's never shown itself in that way.
Yeah.
It's more about when the baby arrives.
Okay.
So even though, mum may be a little bit less energetic, a little less wanting to play, a little more tired, a little bit more withdrawn maybe, or a little bit more anxious or crabby even.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there will be a sense that something is going on, but you're still the baby. That bump hasn't arrived yet. So, and you have no concept unless you've been through this before. Let's say your number, there's another couple of babies that come after this, then you kind of have a sense of what happened. But that first time it happens, that next child that comes along, there's that sudden, I don't know, even that need to grow up, to be more independent.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
sorry, to have to. I jumped because I'm thinking, as soon as you're pregnant with the second one, the announcements begin.
Yes.
The whole, oh, you're going to be the big sister, the big brother. Oh, we have another big celebration. And now as I'm thinking about it, like reflecting on that, how is that impacting our child, our first child, to hear all this new celebration about the responsibility automatically put on, and the expectation that you're going to love and you're going to look after and you're going to help mommy. Like, how are those conversations impacting our second baby and our first baby?
Our first child. Well, I think it depends on what age they're at and what stage they're at. I mean, if they're a 2-year-old, then they're just going to take it as there's something exciting, like Father Christmas is coming. All right. So they have no concept of what it actually means. At 2, you have no concept. At 3, probably still don't have much of a concept of what this celebration actually means. You probably may have had, excitement around a birthday or something like that, and you may equate it to that. But when you get to 4 or 5, you're a little bit more, I wonder what that really means. But until that baby arrives, I don't know, it's like learning to drive a car. If you've never been in a car before and then you're put in a car and all of a sudden you're having the experience of being in a car, you can't imagine what that's like. I mean, a car's probably not a good example, but you can't imagine what the life change that this is going to have for you.
Yeah.
So, and you're not really going to even be thinking about it, I think. I think you're still getting the attention of you're going to have a big sister or a little sister, or you're going to be the big sister or the big brother. So you don't have that. You're still getting the attention, but when that baby arrives, it's like all the attention is this way.
Yeah.
And then you get the odd bits that are left, maybe granny and granddad turn up and, they still love you and they still give you attention, but really their attention is wanting to go and greet the new baby. But they still want to give you a bit of attention. I mean, I remember, that my mum gave birth to my brother at home. He was a home birth, but she nearly died. And apparently, like, she made all sorts of noises. I didn't hear it. There was blood all over the ceiling where they cut the cord. And anyway, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go into too many graphic details. But apparently I went in at 6 a.m. and kind of looked in the cot. And in my mind, I wanted a sister. And I just said, what is it? And my mum said, oh, that's your new baby brother. And I just went, well, I want a sister. And I just climbed into bed with them. You know. Last thing my poor mum wanted after nearly dying, giving birth to my brother. But, you know, I still remember that moment as that 4-year-old. I'm looking into that cot. I don't really remember much after that, but I do remember that moment, that disappointment that I wanted a sister. I may have accepted a sister, but I certainly wasn't going to accept a brother.
I don't blame you at that point. So can we, I want to get into what it looks like later, but I just want to ask, are there conversations we need to shift when we're pregnant and we have this first child and they're old enough to understand what the conversations, and I mean, I'm not even going to go into the gender reveal because that just makes me want to throw up. But are there conversations that maybe moms and dads can think of, or parents can think of having, instead of what the typical conversation is with their kids? Like, how do we empower and still allow our first child to feel like they are still like vital and important and not being replaced?
I think preparation is almost like education on what it's going to be like when the new baby arrives. So, you know, if it's a little girl, and I guess if it's a little boy too, you can give them their own baby. And you can ask them, you know, okay, so now this is your baby, and you're going to see how much, you know, have you fed your, it's a little bit like when you get a Tamagotchi, you know, you've got no idea how, do you remember those Tamagotchi things?
God,
like you had to feed it and you had to do this to it and that to it, otherwise it just died.
Yeah.
You know, so it's, and reminding taking, do you know what I would do? I would get an album, a photograph album. We don't really tend to have that anymore, but you know, all our photos are on the phone. But sit down with the child and go, this is when you were born. This is how you were, and this is the attention that I needed from you, or you needed from me when you were this age. So this baby's going to need this attention. But what I need from you is to be mummy's helper. And be part of it, to be part of, you know, the things that the baby needs, without treating that child as a slave. But do you know what I mean? It's like, it's explaining, having the child understand that when they were this tiny, they needed everything doing for them.
Yeah.
And this is all the attention that mummy had to give to you. You know, so it's doing things like that helping the child to come to terms with the reality of, you know, what it means to have a baby. I mean, I think I was quite, lucky at the time, is because we had a dog called Lassie, who was a Lassie dog. And my mum had to give her away, which I never forgave her for, because she got hay fever, and her hay fever got very bad when she was pregnant with my brother. So that was another reason to dislike my brother. Wow. Because I loved that dog more than I ever would have loved a brother.
Yeah. That is so interesting. You know, I love that idea of bringing them in and having them see their pictures. Yes. This was you. I love that idea. That's so good.
Yes, and maybe, you know, using that doll and saying, look, you know, we have to change the nappy, we have to feed, we have to do this, and we did all of this with you, and you get to help me, you know, you get to, you know, this is where we're going to keep the bag, and you can bring mummy the nappy bag when we need it. You know, really inclusive, making the child feel special, and taking that time to thank the child, to honor them for the effort that they're putting in
Yeah.
to helping mummy to take care of the new baby. So they're very included in what was going on.
That's so good. I love that. Okay, so let's fast forward.
Mhm.
What does this disconnection or I don't know, breaking a bond look like later in teen years? So we've never had these conversations. We have no idea what's going on, but this is what my teen is doing right now. Could it be? What does it look like?
Well, it would look something along the lines of very easily triggered with rejection. So, and I know teens are quite moody, or they can be, and they can be quite triggered, but it's the just observing what triggers your child into either going to their room and not speaking to you, or being rude to you, or dismissing what you're saying, because it's that when we come to teenagehood, we get another amazing opportunity for bonding. But this time we're bonding with our peers, with people outside of the family.
Yeah.
With our friends, with our girlfriends, or boyfriends. So, and nature's designed it this way that we start bonding with people. They become more important than the family unit.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that you've got to work a little bit harder to still keep that family unit bonded. To share in their experience of what's going on outside of the house, what's going on at school, or what's going on with their friends, and hopefully having that open conversation with them. Now, if there's some resentment, for instance, I mean, let me describe it in my way. I had a lot of resentment for my mum for not being there for me, but I never knew where that came from. And it wasn't until I went back and worked with my baby self in that period of time when she was separated from mum, when she was in the nursery, that I realized, and that also that birth, when she suddenly disappeared, her awareness suddenly disappeared, because I felt that, is that you're not there for me. And that comes out in anger. Your team may even not say, "Oh, you don't understand me," or "You're not there for me when I need you, and I need you to do this," and it's all this "I need," and it's said with anger. There may have been a time where they've lost that they felt like they've lost that connection, and then that feels like a betrayal, and then that feels like anger. So it's "you're not there for me when I need you" was running very strongly, but I never knew, until I went back and did some work on it, I never realized that's where it was. It's like you're showing no interest in me, and that was actually a bit of a theme. My mum and dad were not interested in what I was doing at work. They weren't interested in my friends. And maybe I created that because I'd already withdrawn and wasn't fully bonded, attached, committed to this. I was very independent. I was probably quite standoffish. My mum said even as a 2-year-old, I was refusing to wear skirts and dresses. And, I wanted to be in trousers like the boys. So there's that independent streak, which in some ways we want to encourage in our teenagers to be independent, but we want a loving independence. We want to know that they're going to come to us with anything.
Yeah.
And if they've lost trust in you somewhere along the line in early childhood or even as a baby, then they are not going to come to you, which is, like, for the parent, just very, very heartbreaking. But for the child, it's like, I know I can't trust you. You weren't there for me when brother turned up. You weren't there for me when I was born. You weren't there for me, when I was 6 and I needed you to come to the sports day. I mean, that's a very trivial thing, but that could be on top of everything else If you've
Yeah.
got a very early disconnection going on, a break in the bonds going on very early on, then it tends to ripple in patterns as you get older. So my mum and dad never turned up to any sports days, you know.
Wow. So, and now we're talking about, first baby and then second baby, but how does the order of birth influence our kids' identity? So now there's a third and then there's a fourth. What are the coping mechanisms and emotional kind of, I don't know, in how they internalize it emotionally as one and then another and then another and then like how does that work out? What does that look like?
Well, I think again it depends on the age. The younger the child, I guess a little bit more the more dependent they are on the parents, so the loss of that is being felt stronger and stronger the younger they are. When children get to about 7 or 8, they then, they're quite happy with their friends and their PlayStations and things like this, and they're less demanding of your time. So they don't tend to notice so much, and it's going to just be annoying having another baby in the house that's crying, but they still have another brother or sister to fight with, to
Right.
give them attention if they're, if there's an older sibling. So like I said, it depends on the stages and when that comes, but the more siblings there are, the less attention you're going to get from mum and dad.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way it goes,
Yeah.
but it's always the baby, the youngest, that seems to get more attention. And from my own experience, I would say also spoilt. Because, I was disciplined a lot stronger than my brother was. My mum was a lot more attentive to me because I was the first, and she was more concerned about getting things wrong, and she didn't really know what to do. So all her insecurities came out. When baby number 2 came along, she'd already done it before. So she was a little bit more relaxed. And, my mum only had, my younger brother. But if every time another one comes along, mum's going to be more and more relaxed about everything that's going on, because she's not going to be stressing so much about, am I doing it right? She's just going to be extremely tired because she's trying to divide herself in between all of these children, meeting all of their needs and her own needs, and maybe work and her husband. So there's less of the attention to go around.
Yeah. I mean, I was an only I am an only child. And my mom was very, very strict. And if I could compare, like with my friends who had all these siblings, by the time, a lot of my friends were the third sibling or the fourth sibling, it was like a free for all. They could do whatever they wanted. And I'm like, what the heck? I had a curfew the night before I got married. What is happening right now?
Yes.
So it's true. So I would love to say then, okay, parents are listening to this going, okay, but now my kid is 16 or 14. And yes, I am hearing this type of conversation that you're talking about, Sharon. Is there something I can do now? Or is it, oh, well, too bad, I screwed up, and and you know what? And I have to say, like, never intentionally, like if we don't have this information, that's why we have these podcasts. If we don't have this information, then we don't intentionally do this to our kids by any means. No. It's not what I'm saying. I have 2 kids, so I would have loved to have had this conversation. So now we have the luxury of having you. What can we do to repair, reconnect, rebond? Like, is there something we can do now in the later stages?
There is. And just to go back to your question before that, I'd highly recommend getting, if you've got a number of children, get the birth order book. I can't remember who the author is, but the first child is usually the very independent, the responsible one, takes on the responsibility of the family, which was me. The middle child and the baby. So let's say you have three. The baby's always going to be the baby. It's always going to be the most free. It's always, but the middle child is the one I would say suffers the most, because they're neither the first, who was most important to mum to begin with, and they're neither the baby of the family. So they don't fit into either category. So they're kind of like they're constantly trying to find their place in the world. So if you understand the more you can understand your child and how they're feeling about themselves and the dynamics of the family, the more you can have an open conversation with them. You can talk to them about, how they're feeling. From a different point of view, also the work that I do is I work with mothers predominantly to go back, and any break in the bond, if you like, we go back to that time in a session, like in your mind. So I use the EFT tapping with the concept of going back in time and working with your younger self and your child in what we call the quantum field or the matrix. So you step back into that memory and you help the child and you help yourself. I do this a lot with birth. So you help yourself, your younger self who's given birth, move through the points of trauma of that birth experience, but you can also tap on the baby in the womb as well and help them move through the trauma. Then we go back and we do the birth how it should have been. So that is the birth part of it, and that kind of reprograms everything. That resets a more solid foundation. But you can also do that. It doesn't just have to be the birth. It could be, I know my mum carried to her grave a lot of regret of when, this is the story she told me. I don't consciously remember it, but I can see the pattern. When I was 2 years old, I stood up in my high chair and mum lost her temper with me because she wanted me to sit down and eat my food. So she smacked my bum. And as a 2-year-old, I went flying out of my high chair, and my dad luckily was a goalkeeper, and my head was going towards the tiled floor, and he came in and dove on the floor and caught me before I literally hit the ground. Right? So for my 2-year-old self, that was a near-death experience. But for my mother, that was oh my God, I nearly killed my child experience. So we both, and my father who had to save me, do you know what I mean? So the whole family dynamics would have been one of, big trauma. Because of, and she felt so guilty because obviously, sometimes our tempers get the better of us. I've got a dog, so I know, and I'll give her a tap on the bum and then go, oh God, I was a bad parent. I shouldn't have done that. Or bad dog owner. Do you know what I mean? We do these things without thinking. It's like these events happen before we're even consciously aware of what's happening. So, that had my mum still been alive, I could have taken her back in a session, and we could have gone back and we could have, done some work around there. But it's, I remember when she told me, she was crying and she did apologize. She said, I'm so sorry I did that to you. So do not underestimate the power of I am so sorry that happened, or I'm so sorry I did that, or I'm so sorry I acted in that way. Because that is the first step in healing trauma, something like that. So acknowledging that, this was something that happened that in a rational moment, you probably wouldn't have done or said whatever it is you did or said, but we are human beings. And also, I invite most of my clients to look at the way that they were parented. And remember how that felt as a child being parented in that way. And then, if you go back and you examine what that felt like being as a child, it helps you remember or to become more aware of how your child's feeling. But also think about what would you want your mother to have said to you when that happened? What did you need to hear? Or what did you need to say? It's a bit like the language of love. Some of us need to hear the words, I love you. Some of us need to receive gifts. Some of us need to see it written down on a piece of paper, otherwise it doesn't count. So it's the same with parenting, how you apologize to that child is, either you need to do it verbally or write it down or to express it in some way, but don't spoil your child. I know a lot of fathers, for instance, will, if they're in a divorce relationship, will overcompensate and buy that child everything. That is not the point that I'm getting here. It's about having that honest conversation and saying, I'm sorry. Or if the child's experienced something else outside the family, I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm sorry your friend spoke to you like that. I'm sorry your teacher spoke to you like that. That must have felt pretty awful for you. Do you want to talk? Do you want to tell me how that felt? How did that feel for you when that happened? Getting the child to express how they felt. But by expressing how you feel when things happen, you're teaching that child emotional intelligence, and you're teaching them to be able to express their emotions back to you, to that safe container, if you like. You want your teenager not to shut you out. You don't want them locked in their room talking to their mates and playing games and getting in, social media, all that stuff. If they've got a problem, you want them to be able to sit down and to talk to you. And you can even say, like, I may find what you're about to say very difficult, but I'm here and I'm not going to judge you.
Yeah, that's so good. And watch your face when you're listening.
Yes.
If you have to do this, do that.
Yes.
You have to cover your face. I need to check my face quite a bit. I'm starting to learn to do it habitually. But, I think sometimes parents are, you can tell me anything, but then they're ready. They're ready. They're like poised and ready.
Yes. Okay. So here's a tip.
Yeah.
All right. Here's a tip. You want to listen with your heart, not your ears. All right. So if or you're even in the moment, take a breath. All right. Take a breath and breathe into your heart. Okay. That just calms everything down.
Yeah.
It means I'm focused on my heart. I can hear you with my heart. Okay, rather than, because like we're going to go into that, it's my fault that my child is like this, or it's my fault, blah, 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 or trigger, because this reminds you maybe of something of your childhood. But if you can listen with your heart, with an open heart and compassion for what that child is feeling, compassion and empathy, but through the heart, not through the head, because that's where we can get triggered. And that's where we keep going into our head. We start blaming ourselves. We start blaming the other person. We start blaming the child. Why did you do that? Why didn't you do X, Y, and Z? Listen with your heart. Don't speak.
Yes.
Just
love
ask questions. How did that make you feel? What did you make that mean? Is another really good question, because you want to know their emotion, but you also want to know their feeling about what that experience meant to them.
Yeah, I find a lot of parents too, and I'm sure I did the same thing, is I was already preparing my response as they were starting to talk. Like, how am I going to fix this? Or how am I going to change this? Or how am I going to justify what I did? I'm sorry I yelled at you, but I'm sorry this happened, but, and yeah, you're right. When you're just listening with your heart, you're not preparing a response.
Yes. And it's the same with your partner. Your husband, your wife, it's the same with them. When they're opening up to you, you need to be listening with your heart and not preparing the reply. But when you said this, you make and that's how fights happen. Yeah. But there's a really good technique called crossing the bridge, and it's like it's being learning to be the listener. Right? And you want to imagine crossing a bridge and you're leaving yourself behind, but you're crossing the bridge to meet that other person where they're at.
Oh, I like that. That's such a great analogy. Oh, yes.
So Yes, getting out of your stuff, getting out of the blame, getting out of the judgment, getting out of the self-criticism, getting out of the emotion. And you've got to get yourself in that state where you're no longer angry about what they said or what they did. And that's where the EFT tapping can come in to mind. But also accepting also that our children, as our partners, as our parents, as, you know, our siblings, if we've got an unhealed trauma wound, then that's what's going to be triggered at that time. You know, if you as a child didn't feel heard, you didn't feel seen, you didn't feel met, then when your child doesn't hear you, doesn't see you, doesn't meet you, so taking responsibility for your triggers. Okay, this is my trigger. What does this remind me of?
Yeah.
Where does this come from? Where does this go back to?
Yeah. Yeah. Back in the day, it's so funny. It brings me right back. And this is never, you know, my parents, as well as everyone's parents, do the best they can. But back in the day, I mean, I'm 60. So when I was growing up, it was always perceived if there was a dispute, if I had an explanation or a reason for doing something, it was considered talking back.
Yes.
Like, you just didn't do it. Like,
yes.
I learned very quickly, you know, not say anything, just to stop. And I mean, again, like you said, that's how my parents were raised. That's how their parents were raised. So that's what it was like. And so I learned very quickly that speaking up for myself was not something that you do. And I carried it with me. So it took me a long time to learn later, especially in relationships, but no, this is not right for me. This is, you know, because it brought me back, and it's so true. Like, it gets ingrained to you. So then when my kids were young, I would find myself, if they didn't listen, man, I started to yell. And I learned 40 years later, I'm yelling because I'm like, wait a minute, you're supposed to listen to me now. I'm the boss. What the heck? You're supposed to be talking back to me. What's this shit? Like, it's so true. Like, when you think back, like, if you are a yeller at your kids, think back as, oh, is it because you thought you never had a voice and now you're in the role where you're supposed to have the voice? And what the heck is happening here? Like, it's just so connected. Wild.
So, I know. So, put yourself back, and I don't want to trigger you here, but put yourself back in the role of that child, or as adult you, observe that child. If a parent is talking down to you, right, and you are scared because you're been shut down many times, right, so you can't speak back, what is the emotion that's being suppressed? What is being embodied in that child when you are not allowed to speak back?
Yeah, fear. Like,
yeah,
absolutely. And the feeling of not being important enough.
Yes.
To say something. Yes. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
But what about some frustration and anger?
Oh, yeah. And it's funny because when you are not it's almost like you bury that. You don't know you're angry. You don't know you're angry. Yes. You don't know you're frustrated at that age. You just know, this is now the rule. I can't do this. And it comes, you think about it later. It's like, oh my God, I was so scared. I was so mad. I was not understanding what I'm trying to say. I have a really good reason for this. Yeah.
Yes. Now add in all the hormones of a teenager.
Oh God. Oh God. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's so interesting.
Yeah, your voice was suppressed. I mean, it's no surprise to me now that you're doing podcasts.
I was just that's so funny. I was just gonna say this. The fact that I have a podcast is insane.
Yes, because people have to listen to you now.
Yes. Yep. Unless you're putting me on mute, you're gonna hear what I have to say. Oh my goodness, that's so funny. Oh.
Yeah. So
wow.
So if you could start off in the right way with your child, then when you get to the teenager, it's going to be so much easier. So I'm just going to grab a pillow here. So with a young child, right? This is a young, this is a teddy bear, right? And I'm going to call this a tappy bear. And on a tappy bear, you have all the EFT tapping points in buttons sewn on a bear, right? So if you've got a young child that, let's just say, has a tummy ache, right, and can't go to sleep because their tummy hurts. So you can ask the child to hold the bear, and you can say, well, let's tap on the bear and see if we can help you, see if you can help the bear who also has a tummy ache to release the tummy ache. So what does that tummy ache feel like? Like, is it ouchy? Is it coming and going? Is it tummy rumbling? What does it feel like? And you know, whatever the child says. And then you tap on the bear, this rumbly tummy, this pain in my tummy, this pain in the tummy, and I can't sleep. And it makes me upset, this pain in my tummy, right? So what you're doing is you're teaching the child at a very young age to express how they're feeling. But they're doing it in a way that they can tap on themselves, but it's quite good at that. You're creating a little disassociation with the bear. It's the bear that's got the tummy ache. Yeah. So as the child gets older, you've not only taught them a technique to be able to manage their pain, their emotional pain, physical pain, mental pain, or whatever's going on in their lives. You know, maybe they're a bit older, they're at school and they're being bullied, you know, they can tap on how they feel being bullied, but they can project it into the bear, or they can tap on themselves. So teaching the child emotional intelligence and mental, physical and emotional intelligence to be able to express themselves, to where do they feel the pain, what is the name of the emotion, or even if they can't put a name to it, what is the color, what is the feeling, this yucky feeling in my tummy, you know, tap tap tap, this yucky feeling in my tummy, it's safe to release some of it now, or it's time to release some, whatever you want to do, because you're doing it with the child, but the child is putting their emotions into the bear or the cushion or whatever you want to create, the doll. You can draw some tapping points on the doll, for instance, and it makes it easier for the child to express because it's now in the third person. Dolly's feeling, Bear's feeling, Edward's feeling, if they've given the bear a name, you know, whatever they want to call the bear. So, and that teaches them early on. And you're just sitting and listening and just guiding them and helping them. And what is that doing? That's creating a connection, but it's also helping the child to move through how they were feeling. You know, just think how your younger self would have felt had mum sat down with you and like tapped with you on that fear of speaking out.
Yeah, that's wild. Oh, I love this work. I love this work. I want to.
So then when you've when you've got a teenager,
go.
If they've already got to that stage where they've never had the chance to speak about their emotions before, you'll probably find it pretty difficult to work with them. I've worked with a few teens, and some of them will open up to me because I'm a stranger. It's sometimes easier to talk to a stranger about how they feel. But if they've been very suppressed, they've got a lot of anger, they're not going to want to deal with it. And really, people don't really want to heal their traumas until they get into their 30s. They're too busy living life in their 20s and also in their teenage. But the parents can tap on how they feel when they're being rejected by their teen, or their teen doesn't want to speak to them, you know. And you can do surrogate tapping. Oh my God, yes, the surrogate tapping as well. You know, you can. Well, surrogate tapping is, I'll give an example. My long-term partner that I was with had his children would come over and stay, plus their younger sibling that wasn't his, but she would come over, and she would get a lot of croup, I think it was, you know, the coughing, the dry coughing. And he would get up and tend to her when she had that coughing. So I would lay in bed and I would imagine just tapping on her, going through all the EFT tapping points on her, and she would just stop coughing almost immediately. As I've just a couple of rounds of tapping, just imagine.
you're in bed. You're not
I'm laying in
tapping.
bed.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I want to go in here for a second. I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but I mean, I think because you're so good at it, it's so intrinsic for you that you just like, oh yeah, blah, 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 blah. And I'm going, wait a minute. You're tapping on somebody who's not even in the room. You're tapping on your, okay. I know this is not like, but talk about that for a second, because I'm sure people are driving going, the hell is she talking about? Tapping? They're over there in New York. Like, what?
Yes.
Tell us the effect of that.
Okay, it's called surrogate tapping. So nearly everything happens with intention. All right. So, and also if you're on an airplane, right, you know, when you're coming down and the babies all start kicking off because their ears hurt.
Yeah.
You can't get up and can't do anything. So I imagine that I'm standing in front of that baby and I'm tapping on them and I'm talking about, I know your ears hurt. I'm really sorry your ears hurt. It will be over very quickly. And I imagine tapping on them. A couple of rounds, they stop screaming, they stop crying. So it's the intention. It's the intention of, it's like, you know, if I was working with you right now and you were saying, oh, I've got a pain in my tummy, I could imagine just tapping on you for the pain in your tummy, you know, and you probably wouldn't even know that unless I told you, you wouldn't know I was doing it.
Wow.
What's the saying? Where you put your attention, that's where energy goes.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's.
Yeah.
Energy flows
where you flows or
yeah. Something like that. So yes. So it's a bit freaky. I mean, it's the same concept as when I work with a mother who's had a traumatic time giving birth to their baby. Whatever the age of the child is, when we are working back in that memory and the mother is tapping on themselves and then tapping on the child changes. The relationship changes. Physically, I've had a child, one of the stories in my Heal Your Birth, Heal Your Life book is about a child that was having epileptic fits 2 to 3 times a day. And at 7 years old, I worked with his mother. And the first session we worked when he was 6 weeks in utero. She found out she was pregnant. Told her husband. At 8 weeks, the husband panicked and left. Didn't come back until after the baby was born. Right? So she tapped on herself and she tapped on the baby and she tapped on her husband and realized the reason why he left was because when he was 7 years old, something happened with his father and he made the belief that he could never be a father.
Wow.
And that belief kicked in 2 weeks after he found out he was going to be a father, and he legged it. He ran away. But he did come back. After clearing that trauma for her and the baby and for him, his epileptic fits went to once a week. Oh. He had a vagus nerve stimulator, and she was having to constantly record his fits, you know, and this is all medically documented as well. So I'm not just making this story up. It's medically documented. So then the next session we worked on his birth trauma. And I think he had to be resuscitated a number of times after he was born. It was a horrific birth. She was on her own. Husband had still vanished. So we tapped on her, we tapped on him. We brought some angels in and they sucked out all the medication in his body because they were like pumping him full of adrenaline, trying to keep his heart going and, you know, CPR, suctioning, the full works, which is what we believe created his epilepsy. Because he was a little bit deprived of oxygen, I think. So anyway, so we did some work around his birth experience. He came home from school that day. He had a massive epileptic fit. He started vomiting black liquid, which he'd never done before, which we believe was him releasing the medication from his body, because we tend to hold on to it in our fat cells as babies. Like we hold on anything we can't process because the liver doesn't work very well. Anything we can't process, we store in our fat cells. So he vomited this black liquid and then he didn't have another fit for a whole month. And then he would have a fit once a month.
Oh my gosh.
after the third session, he went 3 to 4 months in between fits. And still to this day, as far as I know, I checked in with her a number of years later when I wrote the book, still one fit every 3 to 4 months.
That's incredible.
You know,
I got goosebumps. I've got goosebumps.
I know.
Crazy.
I know.
Oh my God. And I have to say, this is our second conversation. We had a conversation like 2 years ago, and I think I was the same way, like, oh my gosh. I love this. Okay. Oh my gosh. Go ahead.
One more bit to add to his story is that he was undiagnosed autistic. All right. And I believe that after vomiting that medication and doing the trauma work, he was able to now more fully be present in his body, and his autistic tendencies started to fade away.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Sharon, you have to tell everybody right now, like, how do we work with you? How do we find you? Talk about the book. Like, I'm going to put everything in the show notes, but if anyone is listening, I know they're probably sitting, maybe pulled over with their jaws dropped, because I am. Let's hear all about Sharon.
Okay, well, my website is called Magical New Beginnings, magicalnewbeginnings.com, and my book's called Heal Your Birth, Heal Your Life, and there's many, many stories in there. So I've just given you one of the many. I mean, they are magical. They are magical stories. You know, when I created my company named Magical New Beginnings, I had no concept really about the work that I was going to be doing. That name just came to me when I was doing my website. So yeah, so magicalnewbeginnings.com. And there's a contact form, or you can email me, Sharon at Magical New Beginnings. And I also have a Magical New Beginnings podcast as well, where I've done a number of interviews, and I really want to interview you for my podcast too.
Let's do it. Sharon, I want to ask one more thing. Is there anything I didn't ask that you really want to say?
There's so many stories I could share. But I'm just going to say just two things. The first thing is, if you're a mother listening to this, I always want to say to you, just remember that you were doing the best you could with the knowledge and understanding you had at the time. And now you have a little bit more knowledge. Yes. So don't beat yourself up about that. And also remember, it's never too late to have a new beginning. You know, I have people in their 80s coming to me wanting to work on their own birth trauma because they want to just feel a stronger connection with their mother, even though she's passed many years ago. So, you know, no matter what age you are, it doesn't limit you from changing your perception of the world, changing your beliefs, healing trauma, and becoming more whole, but also trusting, learning to trust yourself and to trust other people. Because when we have that break in the bond, that's the biggest thing that we start to lose trust. And it's never too late to get that back.
Oh, I love it. You blow my mind every time we have a conversation. I am so not just excited, I am so proud to call you my friend. I'm so glad you're here. Your message, your work is incredible. You know, and I was going to say, if you're pregnant, share this. If you're just share this, because this connects to anybody. Share
exactly,
and listen to it more than once, because, you know, as Sharon kind of, as I said, fleets over her expertise, you have to really listen to this again to dive in, to hear what she's saying. It is magic. And Sharon, I'm so grateful. We have to maybe even do this again. Thank you for listening to Parenting Teens Advice Redefined. It's not them, it's you. And that's where that magic happens. And we'll see you next time. before you go, I really want you to know something. I'm not just a podcaster. I'm a speaker, a published author, and the founder of Insight to Impact. I'm an educational strategist and family advocate with over 25 years of experience helping families and schools support teenagers from diagnosis to IEPs, to interpreting assessments, to high school transitions, and beyond. This podcast, Parenting Teens Advice Redefined for Today's World, is part of my mission to help parents understand schools, support their teens, and feel heard and seen at the table. If today's episode helped you, please subscribe or follow the show, share it with another parent, and leave a review. It truly helps families find the support, and I'm very grateful when you do these things. And if your teen is struggling in school, navigating a new diagnosis, or you need help preparing support at school, you can work with me directly through educational consulting or my 90-day advocacy program. Just visit CherylPankhurst.com to learn more and to book a complimentary consultation to see if I can help. I know parenting is frickin' hard, but if you're listening to podcasts, if you're reading the books, if you're looking for answers, you are not failing because you're still trying. You do not have to figure this out alone. I got you, and we'll see you next week.